The one musician I would like to play with, dead or alive, right?
Can be anybody. No parameters provided.
Wow, there's so many. You know, Allan Holdsworth comes to mind.
Yeah.
Obviously. Mostly because I would love to have learned from him, you know. And actually, you know, it's kind of funny. There aren't many musicians that I would like to just sit down and have a conversation with.
Mm-hmm.
But he's one that I would have liked to have had a conversation with.
Would it help you to know that I actually did have a conversation with Allan?
Did you really?
Many years ago, I was a small part of a conversation.
Nice.
A Tavakron tour, 1987, I think it was. Gary Husband on drums, Jimmy Johnson on bass.
Nice.
He had a Japanese keyboard player whose name escapes me. And he was heavy into the syntax at the time.
Right.
But after the show, me and my good friend Duff Toole went to the show. And afterwards, he came off the stage and he was just standing there.
Really?
Just standing there with a Coors Light. Just standing there. And Duff said, I'm going to go talk to him.
Hell yeah.
You know, so I went with him and they just chatted for 10, 15 minutes.
Nice.
You know, Allan was a regular guy with an astounding brain.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's completely different. Like, he drew stuff out of somewhere. I don't know where.
Who knows?
Right.
Certainly not me. I would be there with you on that one. Let's see here. Talk a little bit about your current rig, preferred strings, picks, tunings that you prefer.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Start with tuning. I really love drop C sharp.
Okay.
Probably comes from my love of King's X.
Yeah, Sabotage.
And
Black
Sabotage.
Sabbath. Sabbath.
Yeah. Like so many people. Something about that, the way that tuning feels, I don't know. There's just something about it that just feels good.
Okay.
Just heavy, chunky. That big open D just sounds like giant.
It's that Bach thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Right?
It is.
It is.
Yeah.
Strings on that rig, 10 to 52, generally speaking. I like to go a little bit heavier, but I play so infrequently that I can't. Like, I've played guitars that you have at standard tuning that have 11s on them that sound amazing, but I just can't play 11s.
I've long since gone to 10 to 52.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, it's just a great balance between the two.
I've been using the NYXLs of late and really... It took me a while because they're a different tone. They're brighter. They are brighter.
They're brighter.
But man, they stay in tune like nobody's business.
And I like that's actually what I use almost exclusively now.
Yeah.
I love those. And I like the brightness of them. They're not tinny per se. They're just, it's like, I don't know. It's weird. It's just like, back in the day, do you remember the early BBE oral exciters?
Oh, yeah.
Like, you put that on anything and everything just sounded just bigger and better.
That's why every rack system had the damn thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Of course, if you listen to it too long, you're like, okay, this is starting to give me fatigue. But
yeah,
because it was artificially...
It's distortion is what it is. Yeah.
Exactly. But yeah, those strings had that kind of effect first time I put them on a guitar. And they feel great, too.
Mm-hmm. I'm a recent convert. It took me years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're different to get used to.
Eric across the hall swears by them.
Nice.
Yeah, he uses well, we just recently reset his main guitar for Hate Eternal because he's been filling in with Cannibal Corpse.
Yeah.
And I don't remember the string gauges. The Hate Eternal tuning is C sharp standard, not drop. In other words, C sharp all the way across.
Nice.
That's an 11 through 56 set, I think.
Wow. And
when he plays with Cannibal, we do A sharp tuning standard, and it's 12 to 59, I think.
Nice. Yeah, I love those strings. And everybody I turn those strings onto, everybody loves them.
I didn't like the extra brightness when I first tried them.
Yeah.
But you get used to it. And yeah.
And you can EQ if you need to. So yeah, and my main guitar is Bain's Bane.
You're kidding me.
Nope, that's my main guitar.
Oh, it took me forever to get that thing squared away.
I know, and it
responded.
It's still kind of temperamental, but I love it, man. I don't know what it is. I think it's
the frets.
Dude, I love those ginormous frets.
Those are the school bus frets.
Yes,
man.
I love those.
I can't
frets.
even get that size anymore.
Really?
Yeah, they're like 118 is the width.
Wow.
60 tall or something.
They're ginormous.
School buses.
Yeah, but they feel so good. I don't really like scallop necks, not necessarily. I mean, I think they're cool, but I wouldn't be able to play one. But those frets just feel great. And that wider neck, like it's a Les Paul width neck, versus Strat width. So that's my main guitar, and I have two main rigs. One is my classic 30 when I want to just rock out and have an amp in the room and feel the amp, and it's a super versatile amp. You can make it sound like anything. But it doesn't quite have the nice chiminess in the clean that Fender does. It's close. Doesn't quite have the metal that a Marshall would have or a Boogie would have, but it's close enough. But my other rig is all software, and it's the Bias Effects from Positive Grid, and it for recording and for practicing, and if I don't need or want an amp, it sounds great.
Okay. What one piece of gear is essential to your playing? In other words, whether you're recording or practicing or
essential.
You have to have this one thing. It can be anything.
I don't know that there is one.
Yeah.
That guitar.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I've got...
For instance, with Alex Webster from Cannibal Corpse, it was the sweatbands.
Oh, interesting.
He's got to have those.
Interesting.
At this point in his career, he has to have those.
If I was gigging, it might be a different story. Back when I was gigging, I know what my answer would have been, but that's no longer my answer.
Okay. What would it have been? Do you want to share? You don't have to.
Captain Morgan and Coke or
there
something
you
like
go.
that. But yeah, that was back in the day.
Yeah, that's okay.
That was way long ago.
We were all kids once.
Exactly. Leave that in the past. But these days it's I don't know. I don't gig anymore at the moment. Every time I get a bug up my ass and decide I want to try and go gig somewhere or sit in with somebody, I go out and see somebody play and I go, nope, I'm good.
It never lives up to what you have in your head.
No, it really doesn't. Like I can romanticize that feeling I used to get on stage, but then when I start seeing everything else that's involved, I'm like, yeah, I don't know if it's really worth it.
Yeah.
But I don't know if they were the right people doing the right music for the right reason.
That's paramount. It's got to be people that you want to spend time with.
Yeah.
That's paramount.
And doing the right music for the right reason.
Sure.
But right now I have to say it's that guitar.
Bain's Bane.
Bain's Bane. I get a lot of questions about that guitar, by the way.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, it's an unusual guitar.
Everybody that sees it, they're like, what is that? And they see the Granville on the headstock. And
I just put a sticker on it. It's not really a Granville.
I know it's really not a Granville, but I tell them the story.
Yeah.
It's a long story.
It is a long story.
Yeah.
What advice would you give your younger self if you could go back in time and sit down with your younger self when you were, say, 20? What advice would you give that guy?
I listen to a lot of interviews, and that question always comes up, and I always think about it, and I never have an answer.
That's okay.
What immediately comes to mind is, don't do this, don't do that, quit behaving the way you were behaving earlier, don't do this, don't pick up that drug, don't do this to extremes. But everything that happened in my past, everything I did in my past led me to where I am now.
Yep.
And where I am now is great.
Yeah, that's
know?
always my answer too.
Maybe I might have 5 or 6, 7, I don't know, 8 years ago. It was only, I don't know how long ago it was. I might have actually built that Bitcoin mining rig that I was thinking about building.
Right. Okay.
But yeah, I don't know. Probably not.
Probably not. Okay. Fair enough. Okay. Flashback to your gig years when you were gigging on a regular basis.
Right.
Tell us your worst gig nightmare. Not something that happened in a dream, something that actually happened. The worst thing that ever happened.
It's kind of hard to differentiate. Yeah, that was all kind of a blur. But yeah, there were some interesting... There was a lot. Like some were nightmare-ish, but they turned out okay and were actually kind of fun on the backside. But one that was a nightmare that just, I don't know, it turned out the way it turned out. But it was, strangely enough, again, it was a thing sponsored by Seminole Music. We were playing behind Seminole Mall. They were having, it might have been part of the powwow or something, but they were doing a bunch of live music. It's like, might have been it was a battle of the bands, if I remember correctly. And it was us and a bunch of other bands, some young and up and coming bands, but Strange Behavior was in there. I think we were the first band to go on. In fact, I know we were. And we had played the night before, I think, or at least been partying or something. What we did back in the day, and we show up, set up our gear. I set up my keyboard rig, my guitar rig. We throw the power switch, and both my keyboards smoked.
Ooh.
And I think I might have turned on my guitar amp, and that smoked too. And I was like, what just happened? And apparently when they wired the outdoor, because they didn't have sufficient electricity, when they wired it wrong.
Oh, no.
So it was like 220 instead of 110.
Roasted.
Yep. Roasted all of our gear. So we couldn't play. So it was like, and it was so maddening and so disappointing because we so knew we were going to kill it. And even if we didn't, we were just going to have fun.
Right.
And it wasn't so much that as it was like the drama that ensued afterwards, because a bunch of girls showed up that weren't supposed to show up at the same time. And
oops.
a little insight into my misspent youth there. I had a misspent youth for sure. But the whole day was just a shit show.
Right.
And we had gigs coming up, so I had to get my gear fixed like fast.
Right.
And at the time there weren't any real competent repair shops in the area. Mm-hmm. So they had to, I think it was probably Paragon or something that I had to take it to, and they had to send stuff out to get it fixed.
Right.
And Korg was not fast at the time. I was playing on Korg keyboards. Mm-hmm. I think the guitar rig was easier to fix because I think Johnny might have been fixing stuff at the time, and that was probably Electric Dawn doing the work.
Sure.
And he was good.
Yeah. Still is.
Yeah, but man, that day was just awful.
That is a nightmare.
Yeah, and the one, there were several gigs where we. I got to tell this story.
Tell.
So maybe I shouldn't tell this one. I don't know. I'm going to tell it anyway. So
now you have to.
Now I have to, right? So we were playing this one time. We were playing up at the Golden Nugget up in Holiday, Florida, right? And the Stones were in town. Were they in Tampa? I think they were in Tampa. And everybody in the band went to go see them except for me because I was working. Mm-hmm. And they all came back from the gig, and they were just not in their right mind. We won't say what was going on, but they were not in their right mind. You could use your imagination as to what they were doing, but they all showed up late. I was super pissed because I was like grumpy because I was, there by myself early and whatever. I was on time and they weren't, and I didn't get to go to the show, and I was pissy about that. So we used to do this song by Pink Floyd, Empty Spaces.
Yes.
The song before, the little intro before Young Lust.
Yeah, yeah.
And I sequenced a bunch of stuff and sampled a bunch of stuff. I had a sampling keyboard and I had a bunch of stuff sequenced on it. So they didn't know that. They thought I played all the stuff. And there was a lot going on. Like there was a lot of background noise and some keyboard stuff. And it was not just like the original song, but I kind of, sampled some crowd noises. And it was neat. It was a neat little thing. And the drummer played along with the track that I did. And everybody thought that I was playing everything the whole time. So they're kind of, they finally get there. We break into, I forgot what we opened up with, but time came for that song. And I decided to hit play and walk off the stage and go get a drink. So I did. And I just sat down, crossed my leg, and I watched everybody in the band just go, like I was a wizard or something, right? And they were just out of their minds. And I was just laughing my ass off. So much fun.
Serves them right.
Yeah, but it was great. And after the set, because that disturbed them the whole time.
So the Stones played that day, or
yeah, it was the Steel Wheels tour, I think.
I see.
So it was like an outdoor thing. So it was, I don't know, it might not have been in Tampa, or I don't know where it would have been. But it was so funny. I just completely blew their minds. So much fun.
All right. If given the chance, what non-musical profession would you be interested in? And you don't have to necessarily be qualified for, just anything that you would be interested in doing that has nothing to do with music.
There's a lot, actually.
Yeah.
I've always been a computer nerd, so something in the tech field.
Mm-hmm.
Something in development, computer wise, tech wise. I've always thought that would be kind of fun, but boring. Talking to people that do that for a living, it's like, oh man, that stuff can be really boring. My brother was a coder for a little while, and I talked to him about coding, and he was like, oh man, you don't want to do that. That's just a nightmare. It'd make you go crazy. Something in strangely, I never considered myself a teacher. Mm-hmm. I never wanted to be a teacher. Never thought of myself as a teacher. But if I could do something in teaching outside of the public school system, I don't know, something teaching-ish. So let's say.
Okay.
That would be amazing. Mm-hmm. Like helping somebody learn, or helping somebody learn to learn, would be incredible.
Yep.
Well,
speaking for myself, I did teach guitar lessons.
Right.
Both here and before we moved here. And a handful of my ex-students are now recording artists.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's got to make you feel good.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah, because when they came to me, they were, which end do I hold? Yeah. How do I tune this?
Right.
And now they're making records and touring, and
that's incredible.
Yeah. So yeah, I get what you're talking about. It's quite rewarding. But I had to quit teaching because I was going to slash my wrists.
Oh yeah.
It was just.
Yeah, and I don't know that I could be a music teacher, because people always ask me that. And
they're really at cross purposes, because music is so important.
Yeah, yeah, and there's a lot of things that are important in my life, and showing people. I don't know. This is kind of branching out a little bit, but I was like at the end of Cinema Music's reign. That whole year was kind of a rough year for a lot of reasons. But I was like super stuck, right? Like I didn't know how to branch out and change and be different, do something different. Mm-hmm. And I spent pretty much most of 2018, leading up to Cinema Music closing, and most of 2019 already getting unstuck,
right.
As it were. And had a lot of help getting there. And some way to pass that on to somebody.
Well, here it is.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
Right. And that's kind of why I decided this was the time to do this kind of thing, because
Well, we've been talking about it for
a long time.
a long time.
A long time. But, yeah, man, I mean, like, so, you know, I could do a whole video on just what's happened.
Right.
And I'm actually, you know, not to plug anything, but I don't even know if I want to put it out there because it's way outside my comfort zone.
Do it.
So, like, I've been listening to podcasts, which is like the new education medium.
Yep,
You know,
it
there's
is.
so much you can learn from these things. And I thought it was so stupid. And I thought the self-help movement was so stupid. And so woo-woo and fluffy and, you know, all this stuff. I didn't want anything to do with it. But, like, the first time I saw Tony Robbins, I was like, man, this guy's weird. But, you know, later on, I started listening to these people, these thought leaders and people that are changing people's lives, and they've got good stuff to share. So I've been listening to these podcasts, and a friend of mine suggested, you know what? Why don't you just, for the fun of it, just do a podcast and throw it out there. You get a chance to use your voice, get a chance to use your recording gear, and get some experience at that. So, yeah, in the very near future, there's going to be
Podcast.
a podcast up.
Sweet.
And I might even talk to a friend this morning. We might actually do something together. He's a real coach, a life coach, for whatever people think of life coaches. I think they're a great thing. You know, they've learned something that they can pass along, just like any kind of teacher.
I think it's like anything else.
Yeah.
George Carlin had a great line about religion. Religion is like a lift in your shoe. It helps you walk straight for however long you need it.
There you go.
So it's really, I mean,
That fits in perfect.
people talk about Tony Robbins, that guy's weird. Well,
Right.
maybe the guy is weird, but what you have to do is you have to listen to what he's saying, process it, and decide if there's something in there that you can. That's why they call it self-help, because it's you deciding to help yourself. No
Exactly.
life coach is going to help you
No.
unless you do the work. You got to do the work.
Right. Yeah.
have to do
and
the
that's you know, honestly, that's kind of where this whole change, you know, and I hate to keep referring back to seminal music and the end of seminal music as being this big pivotal moment, but it really was, right?
Yeah.
Because it was, you know, that's what I did for my whole life.
Yeah. Most of it by this point.
Yeah, most of my adult life. I mean, I'm 53. So
You don't need to apologize for that. Win, lose, or draw.
yeah, it was an amazing experience. But I forgot where I was going.
That's also a part of doing something this long.
Yeah, I know, right?
You forget where you're going.
I always
Why did I
forget
come
where I'm
in
going.
here?
Yeah. Oh, dude. Don't even get me started on that. Holy cow. I don't know how many times I walked out of the back room at Seminole Music into the front and go, why am I up here? I'd ask the guys, why am I up here? And they're like, I don't know.
I don't know.
Whatever.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't know what that was all about. But,
So podcasts on the horizon.
podcast on the horizon. I'm going to start a blog, you know, and share what,
I have a blog, but it's fallen into disrepair.
yeah.
I need to do something with
It's
it.
something you got to keep up on, and it's time consuming.
It is time consuming, and you know, time is at a premium.
Oh, I know. There's never enough time to do everything I want to do, and I'm not unique in that, you know.
So we come to the last of the 20 questions.
Yeah.
This is kind of a two-part question, and you can choose to answer one or both parts, or neither, if you want to. It's actually got two different answers to it. Name a favorite artist that might surprise us, or an artist that you love that you doubt we've heard of.
Okay. Kate Bush.
Kate Bush.
She was actually, you know, I have
Definitely nobody like Kate Bush.
No. And, you know, it's interesting. About a year ago, I watched there's like this long, like semi-biographical video. I forgot what it's called. It might even be called Wuthering Heights. I can't remember what it's called. And it goes over her life, like where she came from, how she grew up, and the whole scope of her whole career. And it was just amazing. It was wonderful. Mm-hmm. And it reminded me how much of a love I have for her. Mm-hmm. I even had like a crush on her when I was a kid.
Of course,
you know?
beautiful woman.
Oh yeah, and a crazy, amazing, bizarre voice. But you know, like I've always been to the prog music thing, right? And I heard her in high school, and I was already listening to like Peter Gabriel and Genesis.
Mm-hmm.
I've always listened to a lot of stuff that's like not really guitar music. It's really just, interesting stuff. Steven Wilson, of course, his is pretty guitar centric most of the time, but so he was an obvious thing. But yeah, when I heard Kate Bush, I was just like, just amazed at what she was doing. Devin Townsend, I can't think of anybody that. There's a lot of people that don't know who Devin Townsend is. There's a lot of people that don't know who Kate Bush is.
Mm-hmm. I guess
I'd have a hard time stumping you.
Well, here's the thing. For me, I can come up with half a dozen artists, and I will call them artists because they were writing their own music and gearing their careers towards that were in the local area where I grew up that no one has ever heard of.
Right.
One in particular was doing the dance with Geffen Records and came painfully close. As a matter of fact, I'm wearing the T-shirt.
Yes.
They came Alchemy. They came painfully close to the big success.
Right.
So much so that, I don't think they were ever quite really the same after that experience. There was Alchemy. There was a band called Limousine. There was another band called Patriarch. These were all bands from northeastern Kansas in that area, just superlative musicians, wrote great music and great shows, and
just never broke out.
I was fortunate where I came up because we had a professional standard of musicianship that was just, I'm sure there's other pockets of it all over the country.
Yeah.
So I don't want to guide you in your answer. Is there somebody in the Tampa Bay area that you feel like should have been huge when you were coming up, should have been making records, should have been playing stadiums, big success or whatever, that maybe nobody outside Tampa Bay has ever heard of?
Strange behavior.
There you go. Good answer.
Just kidding.
Good answer.
Just kidding. That there were a couple bands that actually had a little bit of success, and were really, kind of on that level. Dolores Telescope.
Heard that name, yeah.
Yeah, they were amazing, and they were edgy, and they were punk, they were progressive, they were just super cool. Mm-hmm. They're like the first one that comes to mind. There was also a really cool punk band called The Front. Mm-hmm. They changed their name to what did they change their name to? But when I was watching them, they were called The Front, and they were like a hardcore punk kind of thing. They were brilliant. Mm-hmm. But DT, man, they were amazing, and they were one of the only bands back then that I saw that like really kind of changed the way I looked at local music.
Right.
And Rocky Ruckman and the Beat Heathens, the early Rocky Ruckman and the Beat Heathens, they were pretty amazing. There was a lot of bands actually. Multicolor House, like there was a lot of like stuff in the new wave kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And of course, one of the bands kind of did get some recognition outside of the area, and that was Parade in Paris.
I heard them.
That most people haven't. And they were really good. Actually, I think it was the drummer or the keyboard player actually went on to do techno remixes or electronic music remixes, and he got really well known. And his name is Rabbit in the Moon. Mm-hmm. That's what he goes by. But it's funny. I started watching some of your other interviews, and I watched Justin's, and he was talking about
his was really good.
It was really good.
I enjoyed it.
I haven't seen the whole thing, but this area's always had like a really cool scene, like a really cool underground scene, right? Like beyond the beach, and there's nothing wrong with the beach scene and the cover scene, but we've always had like a really cool, varied, original scene. Mm-hmm. Obviously, the metal scene.
Yeah, the death metal.
Yeah,
it was born here.
It was born here.
Yeah.
I mean, we really are the death metal capital of the world still.
Right.
You know, it's where it originated.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, the bands that came out of here that went that route, they did get recognition.
Well, without getting too catty or particular, you are sitting next door to the studio where some of the best extreme metal records of the last 10 years have been recorded in this building.
I know. And that's super exciting. And I love coming here just to look. And when I was out there on the phone, I was looking at the records and stuff out there and just remembering, man, this is an amazing place to be.
Oh yeah.
And you know.
It's if I can interject a little on myself into your 20 questions, working here has been very rewarding for me because as a technician, as a luthier, there is nothing going to keep you on your toes more than someone playing extreme metal. It's very demanding, it's very physical, it's very precise.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
In a way that, you know, your average everyday beach musician is not going to be as demanding.
No.
You know, not to denigrate that player or that style,
right.
but
there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, when you got players going a mile a minute and picking that hard, with Floyd Roses tuned way down to nothing, and I mean it's
amazing.
The demands it keeps me on my toes, and I'm grateful for that. I'm very grateful for that.
Yeah, and you know I didn't even really branch out into my love of metal, but you know, and it's obvious, you know, growing up here, but you know that's always been a part of my life. You know, from I think my first metal record was probably Ozzy Osbourne's Blizzard of Oz.
Mm-hmm. That was very early.
Randy Rhoads just blew my mind and changed my thinking about guitar. You know, brought back that love of classical music.
Yep.
And but yeah, man, the metal scene is just amazing. And you know, I love Devin Townsend, and he's all about the metal. But not just all about the metal. He's about everything.
Calling him a metal musician is, you know, it's such a small percentage of what he does.
Yeah, he does. Like when I try to describe what his music is to people, I can't. I just say, just listen to something.
He kind of reminds me of Steven Wilson in that there are certain things about Porcupine Tree and Steven Wilson that are metal.
Oh yeah,
very much so.
Very much.
But calling him metal is,
you can't.
I mean, there's so much more. That's just that's one ingredient in the stew.
Right.
You know, it's like a mole sauce. A mole sauce has 30 ingredients.
Yeah, and so many
chocolate is one of them.
Right.
You know, but it's just it's one thing in
one
this
ingredient.
Whole. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I love that type of music, that type of musician, that type of artist that's like so well rounded that they're not trying to be anything. They're just being themselves.
Right.
And they're just bringing in whatever comes.
I think maybe the thing I love about Steven the most, since we're talking about Steven Wilson, is that he is not always successful.
No.
There are records of his that I've listened to 2 or 3 times and just say, nope, nothing there for me.
Yeah,
and there are other records of his that hold me entranced for months.
Yeah.
Grace for Drowning is an absolute blow-away masterpiece.
Oh, yeah.
Nothing, there's from the artwork to the lyrics to the production style, everything, absolutely. It makes the hair stand up on my arm just talking about Grace for Drowning.
Yep, same here.
But there are other records he's done. I'm not going to name any names, but there's others that he's done that just don't get me there.
Yeah, they just kind of fall flat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I feel the same way.
Yeah.
But I don't think there's any records like that Devin's done. I love everything he's done.
All right.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Maybe the Dev Lab stuff was kind of weird.
He's done some out there stuff. Yeah. I think that as far as Devin's catalog goes, the stuff I like the least is the stuff he did with Steve Vai, which really got him his first attention.
That's funny because that's one of my favorite Steve Vai albums.
I don't really like that album much at all. No.
I think I love it so much because that's where I first heard Devin.
Yeah, that's where everybody first heard him on that. And then he kind of just said, okay, bye-bye. I'm done with you now. I'm going to go do this.
I'm going to go do Strapping Young Lad for 10 years.
10-4. Well, Jeff, that is 20 questions with Scooter.
That's amazing. That was fun.
Thanks for coming by. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
My hope is that all of these 20 question sessions kind of begin to paint a picture of the Tampa Bay scene and the players and the people involved in it and what's here, and because there's, like you said, there is a rich heritage and scene, even though it might not appear that way on the surface.
Right.
It's there. And so sort of an oral history, if you will.
And it changes over time and it evolves. And
exactly.
You know, I speaking of Justino, man, I think
it's about time I revisit.
Yeah.
And maybe do another one with him, because he has done.
Dude.
I mean, that was almost 3 years ago, I think.
I think so.
And he has done so much.
So much.
In the meantime.
Yeah.
You know, have you heard Nobody? Have you listened to it?
Oh, of course.
I listen to that record at least once a week.
It comes up in my playlist, and because it's my playlist is always on random,
right?
And it's huge, and it's like it's all over the place, and anything off that record comes up, and I'm like, man, what is this?
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh shit, it's Justino.
Yeah. It's masterful. It's
really
an accomplished work. It really is.
I agree.
You know, and when you hear that from a kid that you used to see in, you know, Seminole music.
Dude, I literally held him when he was a baby.
I can't say that, but
his dad brought him by, because his dad used to shop at the store too. His dad plays guitar.
Right.
He brought him by when he was first born. He said, "This is my baby," and I'm like, "Holy shit!"
Yeah.
And you know, we sold him his first guitar.
Time marches on.
You know?
Jeff, thanks so much. For those of you out there in the Ethernet, I have been and will continue to be Scooter here at Granville Guitars in St. Petersburg, Florida. If you got any questions about anything we do here, seek us out on the web at www.granvilleguitars.com. We're also on Facebook and Instagram, and the blog, as neglected as it is over at WordPress, A View from the Granville Bench. Jeff, thanks so much for coming. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Scooter. I loved it.